Drop something.
Levi, you can just get out of here.
First on the list we have Daredevil and the Punisher Child's Play. First published in single issue format, collecting Daredevil issues 182 through 184. It starts off, Frank Castle is in prison and he gets sprung by this government agent who enlists Frank Castle to get into some shady business dealing with some drug dealers. So Punisher, he decides to go rogue off on his own. And then we switch to the Daredevil story. Daredevil is giving a lecture to some orphans in a little Roman Catholic school when one of them freaks out and jumps through a window pane and falls to her death. And it's revealed that she was high on drugs, angel dust. That sends Daredevil on the track of the drug dealers who are hanging around the schools, getting all the children involved in this illicit trade. Like all crossovers, Daredevil and Punisher meet, butt heads, and unlike a lot of crossovers, they don't end up joining forces later. They're at odds throughout the entire bit of the run. One complaint that I would have is that the Punisher is underutilized throughout the story. He's a necessary component within these three issues to show the contrast between their two approaches to justice. Punisher is a purely vigilante, administering his own brand of justice. He's his own court and executioner, whereas the Daredevil is trying to prove to one of the children that law and order exists through the court system, through fair and honest courts, giving each man his say. Though it's not a perfect system and sometimes it fails, as it does in this story, there is a reality there that we cannot take justice into our own hands and do as the Punisher does, just executing people based on our own individual ideas of what justice means. There's an interview with Frank Miller, the plotter and layout artist for these issues, where he states that everything he did when he was writing Daredevil had already been accomplished by Will Eisner when he was writing The Spirit. And I'm more familiar with Will Eisner's The Spirit than I am with Frank Miller's Daredevil. And I gotta say, that really is the case. There are panels in here that could have been taken directly out of one of the Spirit comics that Will Eisner wrote and drew. It really is just a fantastic job. It's very creative. It's a very high standard for what a monthly comic book can be. I would recommend reading it if you can find it at a reasonable price or through a library system, but don't go out of your way to try and find it. Like I say, other comic books from the same period by Frank Miller and Klaus Jansson on the Daredevil team or through other books they were writing are of a similar caliber and quality. And if you find one of those, you're just as well off. This trade paperback was 1/8 of an inch across and weighed 5 ounces. Next we have The Dragon Masters by Jack Vance. I don't have a lot to go into on this one. Grammaticus Books did an excellent video on The Dragon Masters just a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going to link that in the description. If you're interested in this one, you should go down and check out his video. He says all there is to say in all the best possible ways. I will make 2 points of my own about this. One is a criticism, is that I wish certain aspects of the world within the Dragon Masters have been more fleshed out. It was difficult for me to understand what I was looking at and where, especially in terms to the terrain on which the people were living and the battles were taking place, and to the dragons themselves. I wasn't always sure what I was supposed to be seeing mentally when it was describing these battles taking place between these armies of dragons and men going out. The second point, and this is a praise, is that I wish there had been more. The ending of this book sets it up for a hearty sequel that just never came, as far as I know it. So far as I'm aware, there has never been a sequel to The Dragon Masters, and that really is a shame. Details are sparse, but I was interested, and I would like to see more. This book was 5/8 of an inch across and weighed 7.23 ounces. However, I will not be subtracting its width from the shelf total, as I do not own this. This is a library rental.
You look like a strong kid. You must work out. Ever try isometrics? This anti-personnel mine weighs 8 pounds. Not much. But
Try liking and subscribing.
Hell of a workout.
And last but not least, this big honker, The Troupe by Robert Jackson Bennett. And of anything, this is a tale of squandered potential. The blurb on the front, talking about the author's previous book, Mr. Shiver, says, like a collaboration between Stephen King and John Steinbeck. I can't speak to the Steinbeck part, but as for King, I'd say that's fairly apt because it's too long, it's too vulgar, and its ending has all the staying power of a fart in a wind tunnel. The story starts out, it's about a young lad named George. He's about 16 years old, and he's run off to the vaudeville circuits to try and find his father. And when he finally meets up with his father and the troupe of vaudevillian performers that he's leading around the country, he begins to get into all sorts of weird escapades and unusual happenings. It's difficult to talk about because I really wanted to like this book based on the individual elements that make up the book, but all sewn together, they do not add up to be greater than the sum total of their parts, which is a shame because thematically I understand what the author was trying to get at, but it just didn't come together. There's this theme running through the book of people being one thing and pretending to be another. So they got like their personal self, their inside self, and then they put on this disguise, this cloak, to pretend as if they were something else. That's blatantly clear that the author was trying to get that theme across. But all the individual elements which would communicate that, they're just not sewn together in such a way so that it has an impact. For instance, George at the front of the book, when he first joins the vaudeville troupe, he's concealing the fact that he's looking for his father, that he thinks he's found his father. Eventually that's revealed. And going into spoilers, the individual members of the vaudeville troupe have their own secrets that tie into this thematic element. There's a performer named Kingsley who's doing this puppet act. And if you read weird fiction, you know that there's something weird with the puppets. And I was thinking, okay, these are going to be like living puppets and it's going to go into that sort of thing. The secret is that these puppets are crafted from the desires and the flesh and blood of Kingsley the performer. And they're vampiric in a sense. They're leeching off of him and stealing his life away in order to live. But he has this drive to keep them alive, to replace the child and the wife that he lost through tragedy. So like I say, there's this secret element that these puppets are not puppets at all. They're like real living things created in this unnatural manner, concealed with the mask. They're just puppets in a box. And even as the audience, knowing the tropes of the genre, we're even fooled for a moment that they're actual just puppets in the general way of like Slappy from Goosebumps or one of the Twilight Zone episodes or something like that. Towards the end of the book, the characters have to enlist the help of these people described as elves, and they wear these big, long robes that cover their bodies and masks that cover their entire face. And like I say, that also ties in thematically. Like you have the secret self and then the mask, the disguise you show to other people. The villains of the book are these monsters that they're the living embodiment of darkness and entropy. And they go around consuming the world to make it as if it never existed in the first place. But they disguise themselves as otherwise normal, affable people wearing gray suits and with mild expressions. So there's a lot of thought going into the different parts and aspects of this book. As I say, none of it is tied together in such a way that gives it an impact. Coming back to one of my early points, it's just vulgar, uselessly vulgar. It doesn't come across as real or as necessary to the book or to the character. It just reads as a middle schooler finding out for the first time that if he's away from home, his parents can't hear him curse and swear with his buddies. I would like to recommend this book, but really I just can't. It's too long. It focuses on too many of the wrong things. It goes off on strange tangents that don't add up. It's got this big thematic point it's trying to make, but it doesn't tie together with all the rest of the elements of the book to make that conclusive and satisfying. I really wish I could have liked it because in its individual elements, it's something that I would find desirable in a book, but in its presentation, it is lackluster. This book is 1 3/8 inches across and weighs 16.68 ounces. So altogether, the books were 2 1/8 inches across and weighed 1.76 pounds. That brings the overall total of books read to 7 1/8 inches of books read and 5.44 pounds of books read. Out of these, only Robert Bennett's The Troupe counts to subtract from the overall shelf total, bringing our total from 35 feet 11 11/16 inches to 35 feet 10 5/16 inches of books unread on my shelf. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Tell us what you know down below. Goodbye.
All right, Levi, you can stick around for that one.
Now, out the window.
What?
Out the window.